In this video, we're heading over to the tarmac ski slope to talk and drive what I think is possibly the best car in the Assetto Corsa Competizione GT4 DLC pack. Welcome back to the Game of Muscle YouTube channel. Click that like button and subscribe if you like sim racing content. So, of course, we are at Bathurst, Mount Panorama, and the car that I like the most at this point in time, after driving every single car in the DLC pack, in fact doing at least one, sometimes more races in every single car in the DLC pack, the car is, of course, the Chevrolet Camaro GT4. Now, before we get driving in this 15-minute ski slope bonanza, we do have the aggressive setup. All I've tweaked here is I moved the brake bias a bit further back, and I reduced the brake power, and then personally, because I like my cars to be really, really pokey, I have also set the steering ratio to 12, which is probably a bit too pokey for some people, but not too pokey for me. Fuel's being reduced as well because it's a 15-minute race. Now, we've got the time accelerated, we've got the sun to rise. We're good to race here. Starting from the back, moving our way forwards. This is how I like to drive against the AI. I find this the most compelling way when driving AI. I get that kind of arcade experience along with the glorious simulator. Put our headlights on here, illuminate things up, and I mean already, guys, with this Chevy. The sound of it is absolutely phenomenal. Out of all the GT4 cars in the Assetto Corsa Competizione, this has possibly the nicest engine sound. I mean, I know there's going to be some disagreement there, but it's just a screaming banshee. Let's take advantage of the AI. Slow at the start there. Off we go up the hill, sun rising. And, well, so where do we start with this car? Firstly, as engine sound, we've already started. The engine sound, absolutely phenomenal. You can know when to shift because it's just blaring away in your ear at the point where the engine's about to fall out the bottom of the vehicle. But the handling of this car is so progressive and smooth, and along with the force feedback that just totally communicates everything, it feels like you have like so much grip, and then when the grip goes on this car, it just goes nice and gentle. So despite the fact that we are flying through the Australian countryside with the potential of road kangaroos in a face and walls flying past us at 100 plus miles an hour, you can just glide this car gently through the circuit without a worry in the world. It just lures you in, and you feel like you've got so much that you can play with, and then it encourages you to just to mistreat it a little bit, you know? It's like, I got all this grip for you, mate. You can feel it through the force feedback. How about you test me with a bit too much steering? How about you test me with a bit too much accelerator? And, you know, it's just so enjoyable with this car. I thought he was going to lose it then. So enjoyable with this car to get it on that limit. Just over the, on the limit, so you're getting an absolute peak grip, little bit of slip angle, and then doing that on tracks like Mount Panorama, where, you know, the suspension's being compressed and you're avoiding the walls. It's absolutely phenomenal. I always find the best simulated race cars are ones where you don't just feel like you're putting inputs into the vehicle. You don't just feel like, okay, I turn right and the car turns right, I put the gas and the car goes faster. The best simulated vehicles are ones where it's like the car has a personality. The car innately wants to do what that car wants to do. it's a chunk of metal. In this case, it kind of resembles a garden shed missing some plant pots. We'll have to add them to it. But it's a big chunk of metal with inertia and all its mass and floating, unsprung mass, you know, it's doing what it wants to do, and then you as a driver are like, okay, that's the personality of the car, let me just put my bit on top of it to get the car through the circuit. Those are the absolute best simulated cars, and for that to work, you have to have a really good time model and physics simulation, arguably both part of the same thing, but you also have to have the force feedback there to communicate the mass of the car and what's going on so that you can respond to it and so you can work with it. And I have to say, pretty much all the GT4 cars in Assetto Corsa Competizione do, they all have fantastic force feedback. I say maybe the Porsche is a little bit vague, but you know, it's still really pretty good, to be honest. That's not going to work, is it? But probably because his car is about the same proportion as a double-decker bus, it just seems to have even more information through the force feedback and maybe even more body roll. Maybe it's got more suspension travel, I don't know. But it's just got so much character that you can then work with. And surprisingly, despite the fact that the car seems to want to move around quite a lot, you are always in command of it. Like, it really... You can absolutely overdrive this ridiculously. You can go totally over the limit in a way that's of no value to lap time, and yet you can be in control of the car still. Often with simulated vehicles, they tend to the physics tend to fall apart when you overdrive them or when you drive badly, which is not realistic, and as some sim racers seem to think that is, but that's not realistic, and more importantly, because we're playing these as games, it's not fun. Well, this is fun. This is fun. It's like the ultimate example of easy to fundamentally drive, but hard to get the absolute most out of, but not punishing in an unfair way. It's punishing in a fair way. Whoa! And when you... Bathurst is a track, guys. If you take simulated vehicles to Bathurst, it's one of those circuits that just kills driving simulators. It's like the right-handers on tracks like Red Bull Ring. Slow, tight right-handers. It just breaks games physics because the physics in those situations are on that absolute limit. Suspension compressed or very low, and then putting a load of throttle on, the mass all on one side or whatever. Bathurst is like the physics destroyer of racetracks, and yet you just feel so in control of this vehicle. Absolutely bloody fantastic. Totally, to me, totally what sim racing is about, and totally what, you know, the justification of having of spending money like an idiot on sim racing equipment. The justification is when you have cars that are as rich as this in terms of depth to what's going on, how you can play with the car, and also what the car gives back to you in its force feedback, and also its innate handling character. You know, bloody top notch. Here comes the sunrise over the hills. It does make Bathurst look like Teletubby Land. We just need a baby in the sun, and we are effectively Tinky Winky. I mean, this car wouldn't look out of place in Teletubbies. I don't think it's the most elegant of GT4 cars visually. I mean, I might find this having some of the nicest handling, but visually this car is probably not the best. Americans never were the most discreet when it comes to car designs. I think for me the Porsche, I have a bit of a soft spot for the rear end on the KTM actually, but the Porsche, I mean, Porsches are just, Porsches are beautiful cars. That guy's just given up there. AI's on 100% aggression, but only like 96%, I think, difficulty. I wanted to make myself look like I was vaguely competent whilst talking and driving. If I put them on 100, they'd be driving away from me. But yeah, so I docked some points off this car for how it visually appears, but the sound makes up for that. Just close your eyes whilst you're driving, it's fine, because you can feel what... You don't even need to look at the track whilst driving this. The force feedback's so good, you can feel your way around the circuit. And then listen to when to shift, and you're great. Although, to be honest, you turn the volume up so loud on this to enjoy the engine note, you've gone deaf. So that is a downside of having cars that sound so great. But let's fly it through this. Again, this corner here's another one that totally knackers driving simulator physics, but these GT4 cars ride over it. Perfectly nice. Let's get on the tail of this train here. Talking about the rear end of the KTM, there it is in front of us. It's like the crossbow, the X-bow, with the roof on it. Actually, the KTM in this out of the GT4 DLC is really interesting to handle. It's got a shorter wheelbase than the other cars, so it has a weird kind of rotated kind of handling. I'd say, actually, in terms of if you wanted a GT4 car that's different to handle and a challenge, a totally different challenge, the KTM probably has some of the most different handling out of all the GT4 cars. I'll do a separate video whilst driving it talking about that, but it kind of drives like the spec racer Ford with a bit more speed and power. And, of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione's tyre model's obviously on another level to iRacing's. Sick burn, so you can actually drive realistically. Whoa! Sting. Right, so back to this car, back to the garden shed double-decker bus. When you're like on the brake with this car, you can... the importance of force feedback, guys, for braking, and then how it allows you to respond with this vehicle. When you're on the brakes with this car, you can feel precisely through the force feedback how much you're loading on the left or right of the car and how much the rear of the car's twiddling around, and then you can use that to modulate the brake so that you're holding the slip angle, allowing you to then very precisely hug the walls, or very precisely take the racing line you want to take with a bit of slip angle, which is just it's like the drift mechanic in something like Mario Kart. That driving sideways and holding it and not being punished for that is so addictive and so enjoyable. It's like the point. It's the point of like driving like that, driving mostly with the accelerator and brake as opposed to the steering wheel, not having to drive like Super Meat Boy, having to sort of calculate in your mind the like trajectory with a bit of angle, so it's not train driving. It's you know, it's kind of like you're preempting the slip angle required and you're then balancing it. It's driving. That's the point. That's the point of driving. That's the joy of it. Combined with the force feedback, that's the difference between a good simulated race car and a bad simulated race car, and a functional tyre model and a dysfunctional tyre model. And the other GT4 cars in this, and I'd say in Assetto Corsa as well, actually do this really well. There are examples in other simulators, but the other cars do it. But this car in particular, I think it's the most, because it wants to move around the most, but it's also very pliable, seems to magnify it. I mean, from a pure strategy perspective, though, well, that was a slop. From a pure strategy perspective, this car's also great because it's almost as wide as the Great Wall of China. So once you've overtaken someone, good luck them getting past you. It's like there's like London cyclists where they have those things sticking out the back of the bicycle. It's the vehicle equivalent of that. The amount of times when we've been racing this online now, and people are like, "Oh, I couldn't get past you because your car's too wide." Oh, look at that. We could do this a lot faster. Just every lap you do with this, you're like, oh, I could coax a bit more out of it. I could do that a bit better. I could, you know, And it's not frustrating. It wills you on to drive more and more. I mean, I always find this with any car where you optimally drive it with a few degrees of slip. It makes you want to drive it more. It makes you feel like, oh, you're playing with the vehicle as opposed to being hostage to the vehicle. Throw it over that. This corner is a right nipple. Like, if you hit that curb on the inside, your car starts bouncing like a children's inflatable trampoline in a thunderstorm. And if you're not careful, the children are flying off into the distance, and you get sued for killing everyone's children. That analogy, I don't know where it came from. There's a video of that happening on the internet. That was just in my brain going back to that. That's what I think of. If children's bouncy castles flying off is exactly analogous to if you hit that curb. Up the hill we go here. But yeah, this car does have a very bouncy suspension if you hit those curbs. But it does also, to be fair to it though, you can actually hit the curbs and ride on them and get away with it. Again, I mean, this is another problem with a lot of simulators. You hit the curbs and the cars are like, man, I'm not a car anymore. I'm now a sledge. But these, again, most of the GT4 cars in this and this Chevy, it encourages you to ride on the curbs a bit, but you can't always get away with it. It depends on the curb, but you can risk it. You can choose. Oh, do I risk putting a bit of a wheel on the curb? Can I take advantage of that, or will it be costly in this situation? How will I load the car if I'm going on the curb? Can I actually recover it? Do you know what I mean? It's like an option as opposed to a binary. You're not allowed to do this sort of thing, which is often the case with sims. Absolutely fantastic. Come on, we've got to get the pass in on Bot F. Hutchison. This is the final lap. We've got all the way up to 5th here. I should have put the AI on a bit harder. I think next time I will do. I think Kunos have actually done quite a lot improving the AI. We're going to die on this corner. I find the AI a bit more consistent now than they used to be. Let's leave space on the inside. Oh, we almost hit us. Break in a straight line. I'm not going to make it. Oh, yeah, I missed the break point there. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think the AI has been improved this. That was a nice retake from that car, given that we were off the track there. So it'd be nice if ACC actually had a bit more of a fleshed out career mode, because I think that would really help people that are playing this as a single player. I know there's a lot of people that do play this more as a single player title as opposed to a multiplayer. But guys, if you've got the GT4 pack and you're like, oh, which car do I try first? Or maybe you try some of the cars, you're like, oh, they're a bit tricky, or you're not quite feeling it. You have to get this, because if you can't feel the joy of driving from this Chevy, then I don't know, you've got brain damage. I don't know what else to say. Turn this traction control off. Look at this. Like, I always find the ludicrous drift test is a fantastic way to find out if a physics engine operates properly, because despite, I know a lot of sim racers believe the myth that real-world race cars just bin you if you go over the limit. In reality, they don't. Tyres are actually made out of rubber, and cars are actually designed not to kill their drivers, because it gets very expensive if race teams kill their drivers. And it turns out if a car's quite predictable, a talented race driver can then take advantage of that more and get more pace out of it, you know, especially over the course of a race. Strange that, isn't it? But I mean, you see here, look, you can absolutely banana armour it. I still feel like I'm in control of this with a Formula rim, upside down steering input, using the brake to, modulating the brake to steer. Bloody fantastic. Absolutely bloody fantastic, guys. So, yeah, and if you haven't got the DLC yet, this should be a good advertisement to you to get it. I will warn you, you obviously do need a fast computer for ACC unless you're going to really turn the graphics down, and of course ACC's pants in VR. So if you're a VR fan, you know, I have found more recently the game has optimised more, but, you know, it's not ideal. But aside from that, and the fact that I always miss that corner, top notch. Let's put a bit of the replay on the screen here. Get the old replay view, you can look at the angles. Absolutely gorgeous car models. Let's get it on my car. Oh, I've lost my car. Should be, there we go. All the 7s. Get the drifting angles here so you can see what that looks like from the external view. Sick drifts. I mean, look at that, just perfectly in control. I mean, they're not the widest slip angles, but you know, guys, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments section. If you're enjoying this DLC as much as I am, this has totally revitalised ACC for me. I'm still not in love with the GT3 cars. I think they've improved a bit, but that would have probably took off the back of the car. But, you know, these GT4 cars, absolutely phenomenal. Until the next one, let me know, actually, let me know in the chat, let me know in the chat, we're not live streaming, let me know in the comments which car you'd like me to do a drive and talk next. But until the next one, guys, happy tea drinking, happy sim racing, goodbye.